Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. And if you have any specific questions or would like to pass along an interesting observation or photo, you can reach me at peter.chan@noaa.gov. And looking at the national picture, if you want additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov. It is a point-and-click interactive map that allows you to get forecast, watches, warnings, advisories, and much more information for anywhere in the country. You can check up on family and friends. In fact, earlier this afternoon, we had some tornado warnings in the Chicago area. No reports of any significant damage, but especially there out through the western northwest suburbs. Also, we have flood watches going on across the northern Gulf Coast. Areas of poor air quality through South Texas back into New Mexico and Arizona, and excessive heat through the Big Valley and through the Sacramento Valley there through central California. Well, here in Alaska, the big weather story going into the long Memorial Day weekend is a warm ridge of high pressure that's building in the mid and upper atmosphere. It's going to extend from the central and eastern Bering across the southwest interior and build into south central as we go through the holiday weekend. This is going to result in some very high fire danger in places of the southwest and south central areas. We also anticipate stream levels throughout much of the state to be very high due to the fact we're continuing to see a lot of snow melt coming off from the snowpack that's been up in the higher elevations. So keep that in mind if you are recreating this weekend. Flood advisories continue along the Innoko and Gulkana rivers in parts of the southwest and in the northern Copper River Basin. Red flag warnings have been issued in anticipation of that very high fire danger Friday and Saturday in portions of the southwest and south central Alaska, so caution to campers and other outdoor recreators this weekend. It may be best to avoid any use of fire or any activity that could cause a spark, so make sure you check on that in the location you plan to be out in. Well, the river breakup map shows the southern rivers, they've broken up. Thing is now, we're still going to have some very high water levels due to snowmelt flooding that'll continue. In the far north along the north slope, breakup has yet to occur, but at least in the northwest, the Kobuk rivers and noaa rivers, those areas there have seen the rivers breaking up. As I mentioned earlier, we still have flood advisory in effect along the Innoko River. Here is Shagaluk Village the other day. The approach to the airport by air and then getting a boat taxi at the end of the runway. Now this flooding on the Innoko River is the result of a backup of water. A while back, well over a week ago, there was an ice jam that formed on the Yukon River near Grayling, and the water from the Yukon backed all the way up into the Innoko River system, resulting in the water spreading out there through the lowlands. So it's going to take a while for that water to drain off. So hopefully here in the coming days you'll have some improving conditions there. Elsewhere, Glen Allen, still some flooding reported there, or at least possible higher river flows there as a result of snow flooding, particularly in the vicinity of Lake Louise Road. Now, here are the red flag warnings that have been issued for Friday and Saturday, covering much of the southwest, including Dillingham, King Salmon, and then up through west side of the Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage Bowl, Mat-Su Valley, Wasilla, Palmer, on up into the Susitna Valley, all the way up through Talkeetna. We anticipate very warm temperatures. This time of year, grass tends to be the best carrier of fire if a fire is to start. And we anticipate there to be some areas of very high to even extreme fire danger as a result of the grass conditions in areas of the southwest, as mentioned there, west of Lake Iliamna, and also around the lower Susitna Valley. So please keep this in mind if you're going to be outdoors recreating and thinking about using any sort of fire or any type of activity that could cause a spark. Check those chains if you're hauling any type of camper or any type of RV, like your off-road vehicles. Make sure they're not dragging to cause a spark. And looking at satellite imagery, well, we have some cloudiness scattered about the interior, but overall, a fair amount of sun. In the far northwest, there's a little trough pushing through northwest areas, the western half of the north slope, bringing with it a little thicker cloud cover, lower ceilings, some areas of fog, and a little bit of light snow. Areas south of Kodiak Island see some lower cloudiness. Back through the Panhandle, though, you're going to see some improving conditions. The far south may still hold on to a few scattered showers the next couple of days, but in the north, you're going to see a little more in the way of sunshine developing, Juneau on up through Haines and Skagway. In fact, temperatures up that way in the northern Panhandle are going to be warming back up, probably around or a bit above 70 degrees. It's definitely going to be warming over southwest and into south central areas of the state. We see the reflection of that high pressure at the surface out over the central Bering in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That high pressure ridge is going to build eastward across the southwest, and that's what's going to allow a warming trend here for the holiday weekend, especially as we go through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday across the southern half of the state. So later tonight, early on Thursday morning, we continue to see a main high pressure anchored out over the central Bering with a ridge extending out into the lower Gulf, North Pacific. Weak low pressure up there in the northeast area, Yukon Flats region, with some spotty, very light precipitation there up along the spine of the Brooks Range, North Slope, and Arctic coast. Not much change Thursday afternoon, still weak low pressure out there toward the Yukon Flats. But the high pressure will be building, especially aloft there out over the central Bering and then spreading inland over the southwest. Friday, not much of a change, continuing to see high pressure in both the Bering and then the northern Pacific south of the Gulf. We'll continue to see some lower cloudiness and a few light rain snow showers there in the far north along and north of the Brooks Range. Low temperatures Thursday morning will generally stay above freezing, even above 40 degrees in many spots in both the Panhandle and south central interior. Look at the highs, generally in the 50s to near 60 there in the Panhandle on Thursday, but warming. Some 70s starting to pop up there, Palmer on up toward Talkeetna, and then especially on the west side of the Alaska Range. Low temperatures should generally be above 40 in many spots for Friday morning. And then afternoon highs will start to warm. 70 in Anchorage, that might be a little underdone, and maybe more like 72 and more like 75 up toward Talkeetna. So some very warm temperatures, even warmer weather coming Friday and probably into, I should say, into Saturday and possibly Sunday. So looking across the far north, low temperatures will be below freezing along and north of the Brooks Range, northwest portion of the Seward Peninsula around Kotzebue Sound. And then daytime highs should get back up around 70 in through the Yukon Valley. Temperatures staying, though, in the 30s, just above freezing there along the Arctic coast. Lows Friday morning, 30s to around 40 Yukon Valley, 20s across the North Slope and along the northwest and Arctic coast. Temperatures Friday afternoon should easily get back up around or a bit above 70 there along and south of the Yukon River and just north of the Alaska Range. Though cooler, surrounding water areas around Kotzebue and Norton Sounds, highs generally in the mid-40s along coastal areas there. In through the southwest, lows generally stay above freezing across all the areas, generally near or a bit above 40. Temperatures Thursday afternoon warm back up in the 60s, a few lower 70s showing up. And then Friday morning, lows again generally will stay above freezing, getting close though there at Imanak, and then areas though across the interior should stop around 40, and we could see temperatures Friday afternoon, some areas on the west side of the Alaska Range, low to mid 70s. So it'll be definitely warmer temperatures ahead of here as that upper level ridge begins to build eastward across the southwest interior into south central areas. And the trend will continue into early June, looking for temperatures to average above normal across much of the state, centered on the Yukon Valley, Alaska Range down through the Kenai Peninsula. And then looking at the threat of precipitation, could average a little bit above normal. I expect some convective type precipitation, maybe a few isolated embedded thunderstorms popping up with some warmer temperatures like that up around Fairbanks, the Yukon Flats, the central eastern portion of the Yukon Valley, other parts of the state. Just a slight chance of precipitation to average a little above normal. And overall, though, the pattern has been such, even though we've had the river breakup occur without too much of any major incidents other than a few trouble spots that we had early on. overall, the process has unfolded as expected, and we'll still continue to see, though, high river levels the rest of this month into early June as the result of the snowmelt occurring from some of the record snowpack we've seen across much of the state.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for the aviation weather segment, and if you are planning a flight Thursday or Friday, and looking even into the longer Memorial Day weekend, main weather feature is going to be an area of high pressure. It's not just in the mid and upper levels. It's going to be building from the eastern bearing across the southwest interior into south central areas as we go through the holiday weekend. Beneath it, out over the bearing, that'll keep areas of IFR going, lower clouds and some areas of fog. We also have IFR conditions up along the North Slope and the Arctic coast, and pockets out there along the Gulf Coast, especially south there of Cordova and off of the Panhandle. By Thursday afternoon, IFR conditions will be mainly confined to the Arctic and Northwest coast, coming down through the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence to St. Matthew, with areas of MVFR along the northwest, north central Gulf Coast, and VFR conditions throughout much of the interior, especially throughout the Alaska Range and Yukon Valley. Friday morning, we do anticipate IFR conditions to spread up along through the spine of the Brooks Range, covering all of the North Slope and Arctic and Northwest coast, down through the Bering Strait, out over much of the Bering, and then also over a good chunk of the areas offshore there through the Gulf. But VFR conditions are anticipated Friday afternoon throughout much of the mainland, again centered on the Yukon Valley and south of the Brooks Range, all of the Alaska Range. IFR will be confined again along the Arctic coast, northwest coast, through the Bering Strait, as well as out over the open waters there of the Gulf. Pass conditions for Thursday, Anaktuvik Pass, VFR conditions becoming MVFR, as we do actually expect IFR conditions to develop there by Thursday night. Same thing, Addington Pass will see VFR conditions of the morning become MVFR, with IFR conditions arriving there Thursday night. For Thursday, Lake Clark and Merrill starting off with MVFR conditions in the morning, giving way to VFR. Also at Rainy Pass, MVFR in the early morning, giving way to VFR. Windy Pass should generally hold on to VFR conditions, and Isabel will see MVFR conditions become VFR. And then further east there toward the Alcan border, Mentasta, MVFR conditions early in the morning becoming VFR. Same thing at Tanita. Look for some MVFR conditions in the early morning becoming VFR. In Portage Pass, kind of a split. Generally, MVFR conditions will hold there along the east entrance across Prince William Sound, but look for VFR holding there through the west entrance. So the overall trend, there could be a little MVFR conditions there in the pass. Thursday morning giving way to VFR, especially the western half. Chilkoot and White in the northern panhandle should generally see VFR conditions on Thursday. Freezing levels are highest above 6,000 feet throughout the central interior and Alaska Range, especially running up the course of the Yukon Valley, and we see otherwise that's in response to that mid and upper level high building from northern and eastern parts of the Bering into the southwest and central interior. Do not expect any significant widespread icing. It'll be rather limited. And looking at the jet stream level, 30,000 feet, very weak circulation there out over the lower Gulf, the North Pacific interface. Otherwise, the high that's situated there around Norton Sound in the southwest is going to be the main feature, not just way aloft at 30,000 feet, but extending down, especially through the mid-levels. 9,000 feet, we can see that high centered just off the Yukon Delta. And winds aloft, at least mid-levels, relatively weak, maybe 40 knots from the southwest coming into Vancouver, and then northwesterly winds there along the northwest and Arctic coast in the vicinity of Wainwright, Utqiagvik, and bringing it down to 30,000 feet. We see the dominance of high pressure there out over the Bering. That's 3,000 feet and toward the surface. Again, the mid-level high is going to be the main driver. Warmer temperatures setting up across much of the mainland, especially southwest, south central areas. As we go through the holiday weekend, we're going to see temperatures in the 70s there. And then as we look at turbulence potential, not a whole lot when you got that big high sitting out over the eastern Bering and nudging into the west and southwest. Winds relatively light at all levels, but on the periphery of a low that's well southwest of the western half of the Aleutians, we could see some turbulence surface to 3,000 feet in the moderate category there, west of AKwx, and again, pretty limited. There also could be some turbulence further south of Hawaii.
It's kind of hard to explain how important weather is to our job. I mean, it really affects everything we do.
In 2018, NOAA launches the GOES-S satellite, which takes its place in orbit as GOES-17. Working together with GOES-16, the two new geostationary weather satellites will provide constant watch over the United States and the Western Hemisphere, from the west coast of Africa all the way to New Zealand, helping monitor severe storms, wildfires, and daily weather patterns. Since its launch, NOAA's GOES-16 satellite has already demonstrated its critical capability for keeping our nation weather ready. Throughout the active 2017 hurricane season, GOES-16 delivered imagery with detail and clarity never achieved before, with 4 times greater resolution than previous NOAA satellites, and delivered this imagery faster than ever before, helping forecasters predict the path of a storm and where and when it will intensify. These accurate and timely forecasts allowed for emergency managers to prepare for evacuations, map flood areas, and save lives.
So the weather matters. The weather matters before the weather happens, and the weather matters after the event happens, because what we're able to do to prepare, allocate resources, provide information to the public through the media beforehand, and what we're able to do afterwards, how and when the waters are going to recede, so we know we can get vehicles with life-saving food and shelter equipment down a particular highway. All of that depends on the forecast.
In the GOES West position, GOES-17 will be able to provide critical data for the westernmost United States, Alaska, and Hawaii.
We're talking about getting data updates in just seconds, so we can quickly spot wildfires and closely monitor the wind direction and their intensity. The crispness of the data coming in at a faster rate will also help with fog forecasts. We can see the moment the stratus starts to develop or when it starts to move out.
Like GOES-16, GOES-17 carries a suite of advanced instruments, including tools for sophisticated earth sensing, lightning detecting, solar imaging, and space weather monitoring. As an equal partner in the sky, GOES-17 will expand coverage of the advanced baseline imager technology across the Pacific Ocean, allowing meteorologists and local officials to see severe weather systems developing in real time.
So instead of seeing something, say, this large, that as you zoom in actually gets kind of blurry, you're actually going to see something that is much more detailed.
In its GOES West position, GOES-17 will be able to monitor conditions in the western U.S. like wildfires, coastal fog, and atmospheric rivers when storms from the Pacific dump heavy rain and snow over the western U.S. GOES-17 will have a major impact on fighting wildfires in California. Up-to-the-minute information and crisp detail allows forecasters to spot fires faster than ever before, even before the first 911 calls come in, and to better track and predict the path of large, dynamic, and dangerous fires.
It's amazing to see what we can get and at the level of detail and the speed that we can get the information down into the ground that makes our decision-making way more accurate.
With a view of the Pacific Ocean, GOES-17 will also provide a critical eye over shipping lanes vital to the U.S. economy, protecting cargo and passenger vessels from dangerous ocean storms. GOES-17 will also provide a high-definition view over Alaska, resulting in better weather forecasts and improved monitoring of sea ice, wildfires, and volcanic ash. The advanced baseline imager on GOES-17 can distinguish between clouds, sea ice, and snow cover, a critical need during Alaska's dark, cloudy winter months. GOES-17's geostationary lightning mapper monitors lightning flashes, including the in-cloud lightning most prevalent in severe storms, helping forecasters determine when a storm is forming, intensifying, and becoming more dangerous. Thanks to GOES 17, emergency managers will be equipped with more accurate weather predictions and faster warnings, providing a real impact, saving lives, and protecting infrastructure. Watching over Earth from 22,300 miles above, GOES S will provide vital data to our weather-ready nation.
Hi, I'm JPSS. I'm a high-tech weather satellite that orbits our planet. I do something called a polar orbit. I circle the Earth from North Pole to South Pole, over and over, while the Earth spins. While I do that, I get lots of information about what's going on around the globe. I watch storms, clouds, and rain. I take the temperature of the ocean, measure air quality, ozone health, and take pictures of the land and sea. This information is used for all kinds of things. It helps us take care of our coasts and oceans and all the amazing things that live there. It helps us monitor harmful weather events like floods and droughts and measure the health of the environment. Most importantly, it helps us predict weather 3 to 7 days in the future. That means I can be a big help ahead of storms, where future warnings are important. I send information to the National Weather Service. They use the information to create forecasts. The forecasts are shared with people all over the country to help prepare for weather emergencies. So you look to the sky and wave. I'll be flying by.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and looking at the sea ice edge. Out through the western coast at Norton Sound, what's left of any steadfast ice is finally melting off and breaking away. We see a lot of melting anticipated here with the ridge of high pressure that's going to be building from the central bearing across the southwest interior here as we go through the early Memorial Day weekend with some much warmer temperatures in the 70s across the southwest interior. Farther north, we're seeing the ice opening up as well and melting off there through the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, and areas along the northwest coast, north of Cape Lisburne, all the way to west and northwest of Utqiagvik. And that will continue here as we head through the month of May and through June toward the solstice. Across the southeast panhandle, we are expecting lighter winds, generally 5 to 10 knots, waves not more than a couple of feet for the inner canals. And then for areas out along the west, the outer coast winds will be generally out of the northwest around 15 knots, waves maybe 4 to 5 feet. And for Friday, the inner channels will see winds generally around 10 knots or so, maybe more out of the southeast and south there. Petersburg on up toward Juneau and Lynn Canal with waves running a couple of feet. The outer Gulf Coast winds will be out of the northwest to west at 15 knots and waves generally 4 to 5 feet, maybe a little higher once you get down there off of Craig. The northwestern Gulf and through Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound, rather variable winds in those more protected waters, only around 10 knots, waves only a couple of feet, Prince William Sound, and through the length of Cook Inlet, and winds generally out of the west-southwest out over the northwest Gulf, 10 to 15 knots, waves maybe 3 to 4 feet. Friday, winds will be a little more northwesterly there in Prince William Sound with 2-foot waves. Westerly winds across the northwest Gulf, 10 to maybe as high as 20 knots just northeast there of Kodiak. And winds generally around 15 knots out of the north-northwest through middle and lower Cook Inlet with waves running a few feet. Across Kodiak Island, southwest winds around 15 knots on Thursday. Waves 3-4 feet, a little more variable winds there as you get east of Chignik and also north of Cold Bay on the Bering side. Waves so generally 1 to maybe 2-3 feet at best. And on Friday, southwest winds 10 to 15 knots continue across Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, but turn more northwesterly at around 15 knots there on the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula with waves of 2 to 3 feet. Throughout the Aleutian chain, east end winds variable to easterly winds, generally 10 to 15 knots, picking up to 20 to 25 knots, especially once you get west of Adak, waves building west of Adak upwards to 7 to 9 feet. Friday, though, we'll continue to see winds generally across much of the region out of the northeast. The outflow of a strongly, center of high pressure that's situated there northwest of St. Paul and St. George. And so we expect northeasterly to east winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet on the Bering side, 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side. Across the southwest coast, rather benign winds around 10 knots, maybe southwest inflow there from Hooper Bay on up toward Norton Sound with waves running a few feet at best. And going into Friday, look for a similar pattern, though winds might be just slightly stronger, 15 to 20 knots there, Norton Bay extending off of the lower Yukon Delta out of the west and southwest. And rounding up through the lower Chukchi Sea Arctic coast, winds will be generally southwesterly around 20 knots through the Bering Strait and lower Chukchi Sea, becoming a little more westerly along the Arctic coast, 15 to 20 knots. And on Friday, we expect kind of more of a mixed bag of winds as far as directions go. Variable there along the Arctic coast around 10 to 15 knots, down along the northwest coast there north of Point Ley. But more southerly winds, south-southwest winds through the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea to 20 knots, extending down to the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And on Thursday, we'll have that broad area of high pressure centered over the central Bering. The upper level feature will build eastward across the southwest interior as we head through Friday and Saturday. This is going to allow for some significant warming. Inner areas will be back up into the 40s, but that's also going to keep areas of low cloudiness and fog going on, areas of the Chukchi Sea as well as Bering and areas of the Gulf Coast, so be aware of that. But otherwise, pretty pleasant weekend coming up for Memorial Day, especially across the southern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.